Pakistan has been, in fact, at pains, Mr. Kugelman, to deny that it had used the F-16s in carrying out its operation. But this is clearly, not true, because the AMRAAM missile, which is a missile that can be used only in an F-16, considering the inventory of aircrafts which Pakistan has, which was secured by Pakistan from the United States. Will the United States penalize Pakistan for having used an F-16 in carrying out what was clearly an act of aggression?
Well, this is a good point. I mean, if it's true that Pakistan did use American-made weapons in these actions against India, yeah, that clearly could have ramifications for the U.S.-Pakistan relationship. I mean, this is not the first time that something like this would happen. I mean, as I recall, you've had cases in the past where American money and arms have that have gone to Pakistan and have ended up being used in context for purposes that work against India. So this would not be the first time. But it's the U.S. has to play a very careful balancing act here. And the U.S. is not going to want to antagonize Pakistan right now because it's depending on Pakistan to help it get the Taliban to agree to peace talks in Afghanistan. So the U.S. certainly will come down on the side of India, and it has in this whole regard. But at the same time, I don't think it will want to lean too closely to India here in the sense that it will not want to anger Pakistan, because at the end of the day, America's top goal in South Asia right now is to get a deal with the Taliban to allow it to leave Afghanistan. It doesn't want there to be a war on the subcontinent either. But for the U.S., the chief goal is to get that deal in Afghanistan, and Washington views Pakistan as an important player in that regard. So it's going to need to be very careful in terms of how it goes about its relationship with Pakistan, even in light of this new revelation.
Absolutely. I think that's an interesting point that you make as to what extent the United States would be willing to lean on Pakistan, because it is dependent on Pakistan to try and strike a deal with the Taliban. Meanwhile, we're also joined in by Colonel Ashish Khanna, retired Colonel Ashish Khanna, is joining us in our studios. So let me begin by asking you this. This was a significant point that Michael Kugelman also made. But the fact is, this is not just a sort of a military victory for India, but a clear diplomatic victory, because India has made it abundantly clear, and it has got a lot of the traditional allies of Pakistan also on its side. Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, they've all batted on India's side, clearly pointing out that Pakistan is in the wrong, which is what must have led to the unconditional release of our pilot by Pakistan.
I agree. From the start, when we actually we hit a terrorist camp, a non-military target on 26 February. And the next day, when the news of our own pilot getting captured was there, and he was not captured attacking Pakistan. He was captured when the F-16 intruded into our airspace, and in the dogfight, in the chase that followed, he shot down the F-16 and also ejected across the LOC. Now, clearly, India's diplomatic stand has been he is not a bargaining chip.
Absolutely.
And Pakistan thought that they could use the prisoner of war to force India into negotiations. And I think America has also detected the use of the F-16 quite early in the day yesterday. And they have come down very heavily on Pakistan for using the F-16, because these were supplied to Pakistan under the Pressler Amendment. And they were purely to be used against terrorists and not against any conventional army.
Do you think that is what has put Pakistan on the back foot? Because Pakistan has been at pains to deny that they used the F-16 in carrying out the operation, but they've been caught red-handed because the military hardware is India's possession, the AMRAAM missile, the shrapnel of it, and that has, of course, exposed Pakistan that was willing to violate and flout the norms under which it has acquired the F-16s from the Americans.
Completely, it has exposed them. The AMRAAM, there is no other plane in Pakistan's inventory which can fire an AMRAAM missile. And I think just yesterday, sometime around midday, the American President, Donald Trump, he said some good announcement is going to happen very soon.
Yes.
And in a few hours, the Prime Minister of Pakistan announced that we'll be releasing Wing Commander Abhinandan. So I'm very sure that the Americans have come down very heavily. Along with the Americans, it's not just the US alone. All our major countries, Russia, France, Israel, they have all criticized Pakistan for its support to terrorism, not just at India, but across the world.
I think that's a very significant point. General Sharma, let me bring you in on this. The fact of the matter is, Pakistan at this point of time has said that they want to de-escalate. They do not want this crisis to spiral further. But the fact of the matter is, after the Pulwama attack, India had said that they want Pakistan to bring those terrorists to book. How do you see India pursuing? Because the fact of the matter is, the little skirmishes that took place, they may stop at this point of time, but the bigger objective still remains.
You're right. See, what has happened is that we have been issuing strong demarches and handing over dossiers in the course of last 20 years repeatedly. We did this after the Parliament attack. We did this after 26/11. We have done it in between also for prisoners held by them. And we have handed over dossiers of repeatedly number of times the dossiers have been handed over. And on none of these occasions any change has taken place. We've even allowed the Pakistani team to come and investigate the Pathankot attack, which was proven to have come across from across the international border. So fact of the matter is that they are not wanting to relent. We feel that, you know, all these pressures finally don't work, because every country finally comes back to its own issues. Americans have one agenda. United States, they want to withdraw from Afghanistan, the troops, as soon as possible. And that's why the last talks were supposed to be held in Islamabad between the United States and Mr. Khalilzad and the Taliban. So Pakistan is brokering the talks to sort out the issues in Afghanistan. All this while there are different motivations each countries play with. We have our own axe to grind. It is we who are suffering in India because of the sponsorship of the terrorism, and we can't relent ourselves. This is by no way saying that we are wanting a conventional war. No, but we have to keep the pressure on. Otherwise, after 2 years, it will be back to normal. There will be one more Uri, or there will be one more Pathankot, or there will be one more Bombay. How does it end?
I think that is true. How does all of this end? Because India, at the end of the day, wants to keep itself safe from the terror that emanates from Pakistan. But Mr. Michael Kugelman, let me bring you in on this. You know, what is interesting is that Pakistan has agreed within a span of 48 hours to release the Indian pilot unconditionally. Do you think it has done so under compulsions? Do you think it did so because it was caught, its lie was caught, that an F-16 was actually used in carrying out this attack? Or was it just bound by Vienna Convention to do this anyway?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to speculate that much because I simply don't know. I'm not necessarily sure it was the F-16 issue that led Pakistan to make this decision. Look, Pakistan has plenty of reasons to want to de-escalate. As you know, Pakistan is going through a particularly difficult time economically. It's got a major balance of payments crisis, and I imagine that it has no interest in any type of escalation leading to a conflict simply because it needs to get its economic house in order. And could it even financially support a war right now? So that could be one factor. Again, go back to what I had suggested earlier, that perhaps there was some sort of broader deal at play here. We don't know. You know, when President Trump made those comments yesterday in Hanoi, when he said that something good is going to come out of the India-Pakistan situation soon, who knows? Perhaps the U.S. government was quietly working with both sides, trying to get each side to de-escalate. So perhaps there was some sort of international pressure, international mediation. Ultimately, at the end of the day, Pakistan does not want a war. India, of course, does not want a war either. Again, there could be other factors involved as well, but we'll just have to see in the coming days if we get a better sense as to what may have driven that decision.
I understand that you don't want to speculate, but the reason why I stress upon the use of F-16s is because this is American armament that was used in an act of aggression against another country, and this is something that the United States would not like to take nicely. So that is the reason why I was stressing on Pakistan.